Good afternoon, and welcome to episode 31 of the Jacksonian. As I'm your host, yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me is the host of the Ducks Dish podcast and the reporter for ScoopDuck at On3, the one and only, that's Torres. As we will be going over our take on the latest involving the Oregon Donald Ducks. What went right, what went wrong in 2023? What's the future of the Oregon State rivalry? Can Oregon win the Big Ten in their first year? You decide. Tune in to find out as we go over all the latest. How you doing this afternoon, my good buddy?
I'm doing good, Jackson. Doing good. No complaints on my end. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for taking time out of your day coming on this show, man. I appreciate it. And before we get into depth to start on what's going on with Oregon, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I've been covering Oregon since 2018 now. So I'm still one of the younger ones in the market, but I'm getting each season. I think I'm getting a little bit better, getting more experience under my belt. So I cover the Ducks over at ScoopDuck, part of the On3 network, which has a heavy recruiting focus. So that's really where my passion lies, and that's a big part of the reason that I moved from Eugene to Southern California a couple years ago, just to get around some of the best high school prospects out west. So I love doing it, love my job. The Ducks do a heck of a job recruiting, and I think that Dan Lanning's really building something special in Eugene. So I'm just glad that I get a good seat for the ride.
Well, Dan Lanning's doing a terrific job with the Donald Ducks, that's for sure. And speaking of, this is how we'll start it off. You know, Dan Lanning had the 11th best recruiting class in 2022, the 7th best class in 2023. 2024, it's in 4th. As of right now, for 2025, it's in 6th. Where do we go from here for Oregon, and who do they need to add to the 2025 class for those who haven't been looking at the recruiting class?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think that Oregon's got a lot of big time targets that they are really in a great spot for here in the 2025 class. And I think the big picture is that the Ducks are only trending up. They signed their highest rated class in program history in the 2024 cycle, which was kind of the cherry on top with Gatlin Bear, a 5-star wide receiver out of Idaho. So he was a huge addition for the Ducks, and they obviously did a really good job in the transfer portal as well. I think that Dan Lanning has struck a really important balance between the prep ranks being high school and then the college ranks, if you will, through the transfer portal. So he struck a really important balance there, and I think some of the premier targets that you're looking at for Oregon in the 2025 class, maybe to start it out towards my area, you have 2025 Bonita linebacker Noah McHale out of Laverne, California. He's a huge target at linebacker for the Ducks, and I currently have my On3 RPM pick on Oregon. And then another one, let's go on to the offensive side of the ball, still in my area at Santa Ana, California, modern day, Jordan Davison, one of the truly elite backs in this class, certainly one of the best out west. Oregon is kind of navigating that recruitment amid Carlos Loughlin's departure and Rashad Samples' subsequent arrival as the new running backs coach at Oregon. So there's a ton of more names we can get into, Jackson, but I think those are two of the very biggest ones out my way that I'm tracking very closely.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing whether Oregon can get to number one in 2025 in the recruiting class. That'll be fun.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They've been number one. They haven't finished number one in any of the years that I've been covering it, but during the Willie Taggart era, at one point they had the number one class in the country. I think that might have been on the Rivals rankings, but they're trending up in a huge way, and I think top five territory is really going to become much more of the norm for Oregon, and I think that top 10 is going to be the floor.
Well, it'll be fun seeing what happens. But I've been looking at what happened in 2023, and for some that are like casual viewers, what went right, what went wrong for the Ducks exactly?
That's a great question. We can probably start off with what went right because that's the easier way to kind of break this one down. They had elite quarterback play from Bo Nix, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist, and that was his second of 2 seasons in Eugene, coming over from Auburn. And he just did as good of a job as you probably could have expected from Kenny Dillingham in 2022 to Will Stein in 2023. There was virtually no drop off. If anything, things just got even better for Bo Nix. So things will go right if you have great play from your quarterback. And that's certainly what the Ducks had in 2023. Their offensive line was among the best in the country. They were one of 5 finalists for the Joe Moore Award. The running backs were loaded with Bucky Irving and Jordan James, not to mention a season ending injury to Noah Whittington that he sustained early in the year. That they navigated that perfectly because they had so much depth on their roster. Wide receiver play was great with Troy Franklin, who got drafted by the Broncos as well in the 4th round, reuniting with Bo Nix in Denver. And their tight end play was good. So that's kind of the offensive picture. But then I think really, Jackson, the story was with this defense, the growth that they were able to take from 2022 to 2023 with Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoi, Tony Tuioti, guys like that. They really did a much better job getting after the quarterback. And a big part of that was Jordan Birch, who returns as potentially the best player on that defense in 2024, coming via the transfer portal from South Carolina. And then you have some of your young guys, Mateo Uiagalelei, Blake Purchase, Tatum Tuioti on the edges that really kind of, I wouldn't want to say necessarily hit early, but they found the field early and they played some really quality snaps for the Ducks. The secondary play got better. Not a lot of missed assignments. I loved how they got the DBs involved with the blitzing off the edge. So a lot of things went right. I think that the Ducks won the games that they were supposed to win. They didn't lose the games that they weren't supposed to lose. And I think really the only thing that you can say kind of went wrong, I think at times, was obviously the Washington thorn. Washington's still a thorn in their side. Two losses, both of them by 3 points. I was in Las Vegas for the second one in the Pac-12 title game, so that was a brutal one for Duck fans. But aside from that, it's just really Washington, and then I think your defensive back play was maybe not quite where it needed to be to really be an elite unit.
Well, and I've looked at Dan Lanning's record. He doesn't have a single win against Washington this season. As of this season, can this season be the year where the Donald Ducks beat Washington?
It seems like that's kind of where things are lining up right now. I mean, it's only May as we record this, and a lot can happen. Certainly at Washington, I think you have a better idea of what you're going to get in Oregon just because they have some stability at the top there. Obviously, when you lose a head coach as talented as Kalen DeBoer is, who took the Alabama job, you're going to have a different product on the field at the end of the day. But Jedd Fisch is one of the best coaches out west, and he did a really good job turning that Arizona program around. Will Rogers, they were able to keep him in the fold, who transferred from Mississippi State to become the next quarterback, who has some big shoes to fill after Michael Penix went to the NFL. So I think that Washington, it seems like there's a widespread expectation that they're going to take a step back in 2024, but I don't know. I'm not too ready to discount them in any game they have because I think that Jedd Fisch has more resources in Seattle. He's a great coach, and I think he just is going to be able to do more because he was so good at doing more with less at his last job. So now I think he's going to maybe try to hit the ground running here with Washington. I think Oregon probably is the favorite in the 2024 matchup, but maybe count me in the camp that thinks Washington can do a bit better than most think in year one under Jedd Fisch.
My only question is how long Jedd Fisch will stay at Washington. Because, he didn't stay very long at Arizona. And Florida may open up, especially with this lawsuit. Good grief. It was like hours before this show, and I'm like, oh, they're really putting all of us to work.
Yeah,
But
that's one of the craziest stories in the NIL space, and that was a guy that I knew about a little bit because Oregon was recruiting him, and he was from my home area in the Bay Area, Northern California. So we're of course talking about Jaden Rashada. So that story keeps getting more and more interesting. That's for sure, Jackson.
yeah, it was just like that was a huge bombshell. Billy Napier may just be coaching for the first 3 weeks, and that's it. Especially in SEC country, you never know how long a coach is going.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there were some really high expectations for Billy Napier out there in Gainesville, but it's been some rough sledding so far for them out with the Gators. But they're one of those programs that I think college football is more fun when they're good. So you can call me a Florida Gators fan if you want. I hope they can turn things around a bit in 24.
I just want to see Florida play Miami on with Florida. I'll be crying like a baby in all three of those.
They got some great matchups out there for sure, and the rivalries are always good ones. So we'll see. I think Florida State's probably going to be the best of the three, but I don't know. Miami has a competent quarterback now, certainly in Cam Ward, but is Mario Cristobal going to really let him open up and do his thing?
Speaking of rivalries, I know that Oregon Washington will be on rivalry week for like the next several years. But we know Oregon State are going to play each other 2024, 2025. Will they be able to play each other annually, or is it going to go the way of the Penn State Pittsburgh rivalry?
That's a great question. I think as of right now, it looks like both sides are determined to keep each other on their schedules moving forward. That's obviously a rivalry that means a lot to Oregonians, whether you're a Beaver or whether you're a Duck. So I think we've seen some great games between those two teams throughout the year. I'm excited to see how the vibe of the game changes this year, seeing that it's moved from the end of the regular season to the perhaps not the very beginning, but one of those three non-conference games that Oregon's going to be playing. So that sounds strange, just saying that Oregon State's a non-conference game now, but I think that that's probably their best bet at keeping it an ongoing rivalry every single year moving forward is putting them in one of those three non-conference slate games. But it looks like both sides are determined to keep it going at this point. And Oregon State's given Oregon some great games and vice versa. So I think it makes sense for both teams to continue to do that. And I hope they can keep it going.
Well, there's one good thing in Oregon's corner going into Oregon State this year. It's not going to be on the CW.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hopefully it'll be on the BIGTEN network or something, or Fox if all goes well.
Oh, it's one of the Oregon State games that will be out on a Fox net. I don't think they'll put it on Big Ten.
Okay, okay.
So no worries there. I don't think they're putting the Apple Cup on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't paid as close of attention as I maybe should have to all that broadcasting stuff. It can be a little tricky to follow sometimes.
It's all right. But Friday will be, I believe, sometime later this week. The Friday night schedule for Fox Sports will come out.
Okay.
So I don't know if Oregon State will be a Friday night game or if it'll be a Saturday night game. Because I know as of now it's Saturday night, but who knows? Because I mean, Arizona Kansas State's awesome, but also want to flip between that game and one of the rivalry.
Yeah, I know that Oregon State has typically been a Friday game. It's usually been that day after Thanksgiving rivalry week game. Um, but we'll see where they want to kind of slate it on the schedule this upcoming year since they're moving into the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So speaking of Oregon going to the Big Ten, so they're going to be officially joining the Big Ten on July 1st. And we're going to be seeing some huge games like Oregon, Ohio State. And, you know, some people have talked about it being this upcoming huge rivalry, but I'm not so sure because it's like, I kind of feel like they're trying to make it like how Ohio State people talked about being a rivalry and all that. But Oregon's got rivals, Washington and Oregon. But that's just me now. What are the pros and cons of Oregon going to the Big Ten?
Yeah, there's a lot of pros, that's for sure. I don't really see too many cons just because you're getting away from a dying conference that just had incompetent leadership at the top. You're making sure that you have a seat at the table with the big boys, with the biggest names in the sport. I think if anything, that the cons that I think of, Jackson, are just the traditionalists, the people who loved the Pac-12 of old, and like all the tradition that came with a lot of these rivalries that are maybe going to be a bit harder to maintain now, namely Oregon State, obviously, and Oregon, but they're doing what they can to keep that one going. So I think some of the other cons maybe have to do with some of the travel for the other sports. I think that's going to be something that a lot of people don't talk about too much. But for football, it's so easy because you only have to play one game a week and it's on the weekend. So I don't think it's that big of a hurdle to navigate for the football programs. But the other programs, I think that play multiple games a week, especially I'm talking basketball, baseball, softball. Those ones are going to be difficult for sure. But from the pro standpoint, the list is extensive. I talked about having a seat at the table. I think that's huge. You're going to continue to be in one of the Power 2 conferences. I guess it's technically Power 4 now, but we all know that it's the SEC and the Big Ten. Those are the two dominant conferences of college football today. They have the most talent, the most eyes on them, the most money. That's super important. And then you're going to have some amazing games on your schedule. I think that's something that is really exciting as well. And it only helps Oregon from a recruiting standpoint because you're going to be playing those big time games with that national spotlight on you almost every week. So I think that the pros are extensive, not too many cons, but definitely a little bit more of a bittersweet moment the more that I've thought about it and let it resonate with me, Jackson.
Imagine time traveling in 2011. You tell somebody Oregon, Maryland's going to be a Big Ten conference.
That'd be crazy. I wasn't even in high school yet, so I would be like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, because I mean, kids back then are just sitting there thinking about Minecraft or Roblox or PS3. They're not sitting there thinking about, will Oregon, Maryland be a conference game? Will Rutgers, Michigan be a conference?
Yeah, no, they're not thinking about that. I grew up going to Stanford games, and now they're going to the ACC. So, God, talk about a whole travel hurdle with that school. My God, them and Cal. So it's a weird time we're living in. I'm just honestly, I'm just glad I cover Oregon. I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Oh, man. Yeah, because I mean, Stanford, Syracuse on ACC Network. I don't know what to say about that one.
Yeah, I mean, they've both had good runs. I think that I can remember at least Stanford being more quality for most of my life, but I feel like there were a couple of years there not too long ago where Syracuse really kind of gave these top ACC teams all they can handle. Like I'm sure they might have beaten Clemson a couple times, but they like when they had Dino Babers, they were really gritty. But I'm excited to see what Fran Brown can do coming over from Georgia. I feel like he's got some recruiting juice over there in the state of New York with the Orange. So never really know. You got to watch it. That's what makes college football so fun.
Well, on the bright side, Syracuse isn't going to forget how to play football after they play Clemson. Fran Brown. But
Definitely not.
But now that Oregon's in their first year of the Big Ten, can they win the Big Ten in their first year of the conference?
I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. It's not going to be easy by any means, but this is the most talented roster that I've ever seen at Oregon, and I think a big part of that is because of the ability that Dan Lanning has demonstrated. Dan Lanning, the rest of the coaching staff, Marshall Malco, the chief of staff, the whole recruiting department, they are recruiting at a clip that we've really never seen at Oregon, and that's saying something because people were pretty blown away by the job that Mario Cristobal was able to do. But when you combine the high school talent that they've been able to acquire with some of these huge names in the transfer portal, like Dylan Gabriel, Evan Stewart, Jabbar Muhammad, excuse me. Um, the sky is the kind of the limit, and they are one of a few schools that have stability at the top, and we really learned that after Nick Saban retired this season, and Dan Lanning stuck around and said that the grass is damn green in Eugene. So I'm not saying it's going to be a sure thing. I don't think that it's a guarantee, but I think that they have all of the components to win the Big Ten in their first year. I'm not calling it now, but if it did happen, I wouldn't be surprised. That's truly the level that Oregon is on. I think that Dan Lanning is one of the best young head coaches in the sport. He's got a terrific staff behind him. The culture is stronger than ever, and they've been able to prove that they can win games on the road. So I think all signs certainly point towards winning the Big Ten in year one as being a realistic possibility.
Well, I'll damn them bear. Maybe they can win it all. Like, because I mean, I don't know who I'm going to have winning it all yet, but four of my teams that I'm looking at are Ohio State, Georgia, Texas. I may add like a few teams, I'm not sure, but preseason magazines will come out in a few weeks. But 2007, 2010, 2012, last season were the years where Oregon came up short of a national title. Can this year be that year?
Yeah, I think I'll go to the same point there with the Big Ten question. I think it's obviously a lot more difficult to win the national championship than it is to win the Big Ten. But to that point, if you can win the Big Ten, then there's not much else that you can't do because it is such a good conference with your schools like your Ohio States, like your Michigans, obviously. So I think that Oregon's going to need some luck. They're going to need some things to break their way, but that's kind of what happens with every national champion at some point in the year. I think with this expanded playoff, it does make the road to a national title more difficult because you have to win more high quality games. That's just the way that the playoff is structured. When you had that four team structure, you just had to get into the playoff, win one playoff game, and then win another one. Now you have to win, I think maybe even like three or more. So it's not going to be an easy path, but I think Oregon is one of those teams that you have to say at this point, even in May, is best equipped to make a legitimate run.
Yeah, my biggest what if in college football, like for me personally, has always been what if Dennis Ditson didn't get hurt on Thursday night football? Sorry, Oregon Nation. It's just, I'm always thinking about that.
You can think about that. You can think about what if Oregon knew how to stop the run against Ohio State in 2014 and Zeke Elliott didn't run all over them. That's another what if you could ask. I mean, there's so many
Oh
what
man,
ifs.
I forgot to put in 2014. My bad.
No, I mean, I mean, Oregon fans aren't going to be mad that you didn't put that in because it's a lot of heartbreak that they've dealt with for sure. But you got to show up each and every week, and that's what national champions do.
Exactly what they do. But Dylan Gabriel, I think can get the job done. I've seen the job that he's done at Central Florida, what he's done at Oklahoma. It's been tremendous. And unfortunately, he got hurt in 2021, which shortened his season. But he's on top. He may just break the record of Bo Nix for the most starts. Probably. The Bo Nix has 61 starts. Mr. Gabriel has 49 starts. Can he break that record this season?
I think it's reasonable for sure. What the regular season schedule is probably about 12 games, and then I think Oregon is looking like a very likely playoff contender. So if everything goes according to plan, I think it's well within his reach. But I can assure you, he's focused on much bigger things than just the starts record. But it's pretty phenomenal that Oregon was able to have Bo Nix as long as they were. Obviously, the whole COVID thing is still in effect, and I think after this season, we'll finally get out of those guys having extra years to play college football. Not that I was mad about it, but just that being a talking point, like how is this guy still playing college football? But Dylan Gabriel, he's one of the most experienced options you could have brought in. He came from a great offense in Oklahoma, and he's got some amazing weapons. Probably the best supporting cast he's ever played with in his college career. So people are expecting big things from Gabriel in that Will Stein offense in 24.
That's going to be a dynamic dude. You get on Gabriel's bad side, he'll chew you up like a chicken nugget.
Yeah. No, I gotta start using that. Chew you up like a chicken nugget. I love that.
There we go. That's a quote I came up with on
There
the
you go.
fly. Yeah, because we were like watching like a horror movie one night. It was called Cujo, where I had like a relative say, "Oh, he'll chew up those kids like a chicken nugget." So it's like I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, throw it out there. Throw it out there. Why not?
There we go. I mean, because like Oregon quarterbacks like breaking the records for most starts in NCAA history. It's kind of like James Holtzhauer on Jeopardy breaking his own 1 day record on Jeopardy. It's stuff you don't see every day. And I'm looking at that QB situation for the future. Looks like it's in good hands, especially with Dante Moore. Like he's just like, okay, I want to be a starter, but I'm not in that big of a hurry. Especially with UCLA being a dung heap. I'm out of here.
That was probably the best situation that I think both parties could have asked for, with Dante looking to develop behind a veteran, Dylan Gabriel, and a really, really savvy up and coming offensive mind, and Will Stein. And he has a path to playing time in 2025 if he does in fact end up redshirting. But I think if you're just looking at Oregon, they haven't had this deep of a quarterback room really ever in the years that I've been following the team, which is pretty phenomenal to say. So you have a long season. You're in the Big Ten, like we talked about. Jackson, guys get hit. I think Oregon's going to have a great offensive line once again under Alik Terry, but having a quality backup and maybe even a third quarterback that I think is really exciting. And Austin Novosad, he signed with the Ducks in the 2023 class. He was the first commit under Will Stein, who flipped him from his longtime commitment to Baylor as a Texas native. I think he's a guy that's probably not getting talked about enough in this quarterback room, but he looked great in that spring game aside from his interception. And I think that Oregon does feel relatively confident about going 3 deep if they really needed to. But obviously the conversation at the top starts with Dylan Gabriel, and then Dante Moore is squarely in the mix to be involved in 2025, but maybe we'll see him a little bit this year. Who knows?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens for. I'm loving the schedule because we're gonna see them play Michigan. We're gonna see them play the Buckeyes. Unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna see Oregon US. Got that wrong. No, we're seeing
No,
USC
they play
Washington.
UCLA.
Yep,
They play UCLA
UCLA.
down here this year.
Yeah, that's gonna be funny though, because it's like your first Big Ten conference game is against one of the teams that left with you for the Big Ten.
No, yeah, it's definitely a funny little way that everything broke, but I like their schedule too. I think there's a lot of great games there. Going out to Michigan is going to be a great game. I want to get my ticket to that October 12th game against the Buckeyes in Eugene. I think that's probably going to be a game of the year candidate. So I probably need to get on that, Jackson. But a lot of good games on this schedule, and it'll give Oregon an opportunity to obviously see how they fare in the Big Ten. Some good road trips as well. I think they go out to Wisconsin, which should be
Oh
a
yeah,
fun game. So I'm
that's
just
gonna.
excited to see how they stack up, honestly.
I'm just glad you guys don't have to go to Connect State. That because I mean, if you're in the top 5 and you're going to Connect Stadium, they'll chew you up like a
Which one's
chicken.
that? Which one's
Iowa
that? Iowa. Oh yeah. I
is
mean,
like
not too many people were worried about that offense, though. I gotta say.
yeah, but I'll always look at that history. Anytime a top 5 team goes to Connect Stadium, it's
Sure, sure.
but as we go over, so before we end this episode, we'll be telling everyone about what's going on. It's gonna be interesting seeing what happens for 2024. We're getting close to college football season, and and again, congratulations on coming back to On3 at ScoopDuck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a blast working with Justin Hopkins again, and being back with the community, our subscribers. They're the ones that kind of make it a special place.
And for those who want to like get some of the latest Oregon knowledge, or discuss like the history of Oregon, Oregon State, or Oregon Washington, which is basically like the Alabama Tennessee of the West Coast for us down south, uh, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter/X at mtorresports. That's actually the same username for me on Facebook and Instagram as well. All of my written work is over at scoopduck.com. You can try us out, subscribe for $1 and get a month of premium access. And then you can also check us out on YouTube at ScoopDuck On3. We've been growing the channel over there, myself and Justin Hopkins. bringing on a lot of great guests. I'm approaching the 500th episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. So that's where you can find me. And yeah, just appreciate you having me on and giving me a chance to talk some Ducks.
There we go. Talking about those Oregon Donald Ducks. And for those that are tuning in this episode, it's been a great episode, episode 31. And tune in for episode 32, the next episode with Steve Hellwagon, the senior editor and writer of Buttnuts 247, as we'll be going over the latest on the Ohio State Buckeyes and Jake Diabler at Ohio State men's basketball. And if you love this content, like, comment, subscribe to @JacksonJohnson979 right here on YouTube. You can check me out on X at Jackson09960335 and on Instagram and Threads at JacksonJohnson543908. Till this next episode, stay safe, stay cool, stay away from that pollen. See you soon.